Welcome to Chalice Unitarian Universalist Congregation. We are a community of diverse beliefs and experiences, nurturing the liberal religious spirit and united by our desire to grow in love and in service. Whoever you are, whomever you love, whatever is your life's journey, you are welcome here. Whether you gather with us every Sunday, once or twice a year, or are with us for the first time this morning, we are glad you are here. I am Ann McKernan, your worship associate today. Our service today is led by our Spirit Study group, consisting of Julie Mack, Sarah Shepard, David Bienstock, Dean Gadet, Mariana Basila, Bonnie Packard, and Tom Karlstrom. Our worship musician this morning is John Schultz, and our song leader is Laura Brown. Our greeter is Debbie Resler. Welcome to our Sunday service, to those of you here and to those of you online. For those of us here in the chapel, you see that we have our windows open and we have excellent air circulation, but if for any reason you feel uncomfortable, you are welcome to step outside where you can hear the service from the speakers outside. We are always happy to see newcomers here, and if you are a newcomer, the best way to get information is through our email newsletter. So if you didn't leave your email, please do. Our weekly email, as I said, is the best way to get information on many activities that we have here each week. I also want to note that tomorrow is Indigenous Peoples Day, and we hope that this service, Exploring White Supremacy Culture, is an appropriate way for our congregation to mark this day. Now, let's take a breath together.
A land acknowledgement is an honest and historically accurate way to recognize the traditional First Nations of a place. It commemorates Indigenous peoples' principal kinship to the land and the fact that they have not been and cannot be erased from their collective First Mother, the land. It is a starting place to change how the land is seen and talked about, according to Wanda Nannybush of the Anishinaabeg Nation in Ontario. For non-Indigenous communities, a land acknowledgement is a powerful way of showing respect and honor for the Indigenous people of the land on which we work and live. It is a way of resisting the erasure of Indigenous histories and working towards honoring and inviting the truth. It is a stepping stone to honoring broken treaty relationships. It is an act of reconciliation. Land acknowledgements are not about placing blame, nor are they intended to restore white comfort. They are prayerful, they are personal, with carefully chosen and accurate language. In honoring Indigenous peoples, we strive to learn the pronunciation of their names. Land acknowledgements recognize how systemic and institutional systems of power have oppressed Indigenous people, and how that oppression has historically influenced the way non-Indigenous peoples perceive and interact with them, in the past as well as in the present. And so, I offer this land acknowledgement. I acknowledge that I live, work, and raise my family on stolen land, the ancestral homeland of the Piamkouichim and the Kumeyaay Nations, a people who have been living, working, and raising families on this land of their ancestors for countless generations. People who have an enduring connection to this land that can never be erased. People for whom their deep relationship with this land of their ancestors is inseparable from who they are. People who consider this land and everything around them to be part of their enduring family.
Now we light our chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. I'd like to invite Cyrus Felly to light our chalice this morning with Andrea McDonald. The chalice lighting comes from Jamie A. Yandel. the sacred power of justice. We light this flame to ignite the sacred power of justice. We light this flame so that it may be a beacon of hope in moments of uncertainty, fear, anxiety, and the unknown. We light this flame and are emboldened by its blaze, knowing our strength as a prophetic and powerful people is rooted in the diverse ways we answer the call to love.
The words of our call to worship today come from Audre Lorde. You do not have to be me in order for us to fight alongside each other. I do not have to be you to recognize that our wars are the same. What we must do is commit ourselves to some future that can include each other and to work toward that future with particular strengths of our individual identities. And in order for us to do this, we must allow each other our differences at the same time that we recognize our sameness. Please rise in body or spirit to join us in singing.
Strong for me, sing to me quiet. Please be seated.
Our Sunday worship is the shared spiritual practice of our community. We tend to the congregation during this time by sharing and honoring our joys and sorrows. Here in the chapel, you are welcome to write your joy or sorrow onto a candle card, which will be collected from you. Online, please write your joy or sorrow, including your name, into the chat box. These joys and sorrows will be spoken out loud, but then they will be removed from the recording, so it will not go on the YouTube channel. So we have a few minutes of music so you can write down what you'd like to share. If you would like to send Reverend Sharon a confidential note about your joy or sorrows, or to make a prayer request, please email her. Her email address will be on the screen in a moment. light a final candle for all the joys and sorrows that go unshared and unspoken this morning. These too are held in the love and support of this community. Now we invite the children and anyone else who would like to come forward for a story.
The In-Between Book by Christopher Willard and Olivia Weiser, art by Allison Oliver. Have you ever noticed that there is a space between everything? There is space between you and other people, between pictures on the wall, between notes in a song. You might think these spaces are empty, but they actually help us see the shape and beauty of everything around us in a whole new way, even in ways that some grown-ups cannot see. This book will show you how to mindfully notice these spaces and become more curious, calm, and creative. Close your eyes. That's a weird thing to do while reading a book. Now focus on your body. Can you find the teeny tiny pause between breathing in and breathing out? Focusing on this space can help you feel more relaxed. If you're reading this book with someone else, rest your head on their chest. If you're reading this book by yourself, put your hand on your own chest. Listen or feel for heartbeats. Are there spaces between them? Trace the space between these flowers with your finger. What shape does it make? Can you trace the space between other objects around you? Between the trees on your street? Between the toys in your room? Stand up and take a few steps around the room. Is there a moment of stillness when one footstep turns into the other? What about the pause between jumping up and coming back down? Now look out the window. What can you see between the clouds? If it's nighttime, what can you see in the space between the stars or the lights in your neighborhood? Slowly sit back down and notice just when your body touches the surface underneath you. Can you feel the moment in between standing and sitting? Now make your body as quiet as possible, maybe even closing your eyes again, and listen to all the sounds around you. What do you hear between the sounds? Is there actually any silence? Tell a joke to a parent or a friend. Do you notice a pause between your joke and their laugh? Can you think of any other in-between spaces? What about the pause between a question and an answer? Try to find that pause as you read one of the questions in this book. If you're thinking about an important question and you stop to listen, does it help you find the answer you're looking for? Turn to the person reading this book with you and give them a hug. Can you feel a space between you? What are the feelings between you? Clap your hands. Focus on the space between claps. Can you find anything hidden in the spaces between these lines? For an extra challenge, what did you feel in the time between looking at this picture for the first time and discovering something hidden within it? As you can see, there are many in-between spaces all around you. As you notice them, you can learn more about yourself and the world. How do you feel different between starting and finishing this book? Now, try to mindfully notice the space between this final sentence and closing the book.
I remember he said, "Pull up your socks," and one of the students back in those days in the 70s said, "I don't wear socks." And he said, "Then hitch up your pants." But it's the idea of rousing yourself when you start going down. So I don't think I have to talk too much about what going down means. But it has a lot of habit associated with it, and it's often begins with fear. It probably always begins with some form of fear, and it can manifest as loss of heart. It can manifest as couldn't care less. It manifests as depression, but it starts off with just a bad feeling that usually has some outer circumstance that seems to have triggered it, like a loss or embarrassment or a failure, not having measured up. And then usually it has a lot of storyline, and that where you beat up on yourself is the usual scenario, and you start going down. Feeling of being a failure, being a fraud. But anyway, going down. What is it John Lennon said? "I need a fix because I'm going down." Well, we know what he was referring to, but this is a different kind of fix, a Lungta fix. It doesn't have a hangover. In fact, it's a way of turning in the direction of courage, turning in the direction of calling on your natural intelligence.
This year's Spirit Study is based on the work of Tema Okun on white supremacy characteristics and their antidotes. Each service, today's and those over the next 8 months, will be different, but they are all the accumulation of hours of personal spiritual reflection, sharing of experiences and ideas, and communal growth by the individuals leading the services. It is with much gratitude and admiration that we thank the congregants participating in today's service and in those to come. If you're interested in getting involved, please contact the Imagining Liberation leaders. And now, Julie Mack will share some words with us.
Why are we talking about white supremacist culture? We already know and understand that white supremacy is bad. We don't need to keep hearing about it. Haven't we as a progressive religious group already moved beyond believing that white people are superior? Of course we have. Sunday worship, can't it just be about nurturing our spirits and expressing gratitude for the world? Not keep hearing about how horrible our society is? And how is talking about white supremacy a spiritual issue anyways? Well, to me, it's a deeply spiritual issue and a deeply personal issue. It's spiritual to me because our UU principles tell us that we believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every person, that we believe there should be justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. And we have a goal of creating a world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Yet we're living in a society where some people are not seen as worthy, a society that lacks racial justice, that lacks racial equity, a society where there is not peace or justice for all. And recognizing that fact, we are called by our faith to take action to dismantle racism and other oppressions, both in ourselves and our institutions. And these values are a large part of my personal faith and the reason that I came to Unitarian Universalism many years ago. But this is also a personal issue for me. I spent 26 years of my life in a relationship with a Black man. We created and we raised 2 children together. And my ex-husband and his family and our children, they walk through life differently than I do because of race. And I learned a lot from that relationship. I learned about racial trauma. I learned about microaggressions and how they take a toll on your spirit. And I learned to live with fear. Fear for my husband's physical safety, sometimes our physical safety, and especially for our children's emotional safety. It's all-encompassing. It never goes away. And there's just never a break from that fear. I could tolerate it because I knew that I lived that way because I was only in that situation because of a choice that I made. My choice to be in a relationship with somebody who did not share my white privilege. And when I was not with my family, I could choose to forget about race for a little while. And I'm now in a relationship with somebody who does share my white privilege. And let me tell you, that white privilege is a pretty good shield that provides a lot of emotional and physical protection for me in life. It's not fair, it's not right, and it's not in line with my spiritual beliefs. It has to change. White supremacy is a foundational layer of our society. It infects all of us. And as Reverend Sharon said in the first sermon on this topic, white supremacy culture hurts us all, even if it doesn't hurt us all equally. The reality is that we live in a society that none of us in this room built, and with a past that we cannot change or erase. All of us here want to see our world work in a way that fits with our UU values. But how are we actually supposed to do that? How do we dismantle racism? It is a lofty goal to make change and build beloved community. And beloved community means more than just the community inside this chapel. Beloved community includes the wider world, and we want that world to be better for all people. To do that, we have to have a better understanding of how fear works to support our white supremacist culture. We have to have a better understanding of how trauma works. And we have to have a good understanding of how fear works in our bodies. We have to learn to be uncomfortable. We have to help our bodies learn the difference between being uncomfortable and being in danger so that we can recognize and manage our fears when it arises. We'll be talking about the characteristics of white supremacy culture and the antidotes to those characteristics throughout the next year. And today is fear. How is fear a part of a white supremacist culture? We're all familiar with the fear tactics that right-wing talk show hosts use to rile up their base, or the fears that drive MAGA groups to protest and violence in the streets. We know how our politicians use fear to motivate us into certain political beliefs or policies. But there's something deeper about fear that we need to reckon with. There's a great book on this topic by Resmaa Menakem, and it's called My Grandmother's Hands. And he says in that book, the growing conflict that we see today appears to be a struggle for political and social power, but he says the real conflict's more visceral. It is a battle for the souls and the bodies of white Americans. When we see anger and violence in the streets of our country, the real battlefield is inside our bodies. And if we are to survive as a country, it's inside our bodies where this conflict needs to be addressed. He goes on to say, we have earnestly tried to address white supremacy culture in America with reason and principles and ideas, using dialogues and forums and discussions and education and mental training. Does that sound familiar? But white supremacy continues. Menachem says it's not that we've been lazy or insincere in our efforts to eradicate white supremacy, but we've focused our efforts in the wrong direction. We've tried to teach our brains to think better about race. But white supremacy does not live in our thinking brains. It lives and it breathes in our bodies. Our bodies have a form of knowledge that is very different from the knowledge in our brains. And all of us, have you ever felt a constriction in your chest, shortness of breath, anxious electricity, that buzzing of anxiety? All of these feelings, they're our body's warning signs about what is safe and what is dangerous. Centuries of racial trauma and systemic discrimination and the ideology that made white bodies and Western culture the norm for everything else to be measured against has impacted how our bodies and our nervous systems react around each other. Menachem tells us that to end the problem of white supremacy, we can't begin with guilt or blame. We have to begin with our bodies. And today, we're going to talk a little bit about how to do that. Where do we find fear? One place we find a lot of it is in our conversations. All of us have overheard conversations or been part of conversations that made our bodies feel afraid. I sure have. Let's look at a few examples of how fear rises in our bodies. Think back to a conversation that you've had about race. Conversations with people who look like you and conversations with people who don't look like you. Think back to a difficult conversation that you had with somebody here at Chalice or in your families. Can you feel your chest constrict as you remember those conversations? Can you feel the tingling of anxiety? Can you feel energy surging through you? What causes that? When this has been studied, it's shown that the most common cause of those feelings is fear. We're not in physical danger in these conversations, but our bodies think we are, and they react. What are we afraid of? I'm afraid I'm going to say something stupid and I'll be embarrassed. I'm afraid somebody will get mad at me. I'm afraid that I'll say the wrong thing and I'm going to feel ashamed of myself. I'm afraid I'll be misunderstood and I'll look like a racist. Shame and anxiety, all of us have felt these, and they're very powerful emotions. And our bodies react to those fears a lot quicker than our brains do. And those anxieties, like I said, register in our bodies like we're sensing an actual threat. Robin DiAngelo has written a lot about the concept of white fragility and how white people have really been insulated from needing to think about race on a daily basis. I know what that insulation feels like, and I know what it feels like to not have it anymore. People of color don't have that benefit. They're forced at an early age to learn how to have racial conversations and deal with it in society and be used to feeling uncomfortable. So Robin DiAngelo says we need white people to build a greater collective and individual resiliency around race. Because until we can build those coping skills in these conversations, we're going to continue to perceive and experience the conversations as threatening, and our bodies will instinctively react. That makes us unable to continue in those conversations using our brains. So we have to teach our bodies to maintain an awareness of physical safety, despite our emotional distress. And until we do that, these fears and anxieties will perpetuate status quo of white supremacy in our culture. I have had hundreds, if not thousands, of uncomfortable conversations, difficult conversations, especially with my ex-husband, who I said the wrong thing to a lot of times. I've been defensive, I minimized his trauma, and I said stupid and careless things that hurt people that I loved. And throw in the regular ways that couples traumatize each other, and I can tell you that things were not always easy. But after a lot of years of those experiences, I learned to talk differently. I learned to listen without being defensive. I trained my body so that I can sit in difficult conversations without letting that anxiety consume me or derail me. And that has been a really helpful skill in all areas of my life, especially in my work in conflict resolution. So how do we do this? How do we build resilience so that we can disrupt fear? We borrow from trauma work, we borrow from mindfulness, we learn to construct new narratives, and we give ourselves lots of chances to practice. These are antidotes to fear.
You know, sometimes I get so tired of talking about racism. I feel like we've been talking about racism at Chalice for years, and there are other issues that need addressing, like sexism, for example. Women are an oppressed minority group too. Women are paid less than men, and we're often treated as sex objects. Everything is always about race and racism, but what about gender discrimination?
You know what, Laura, I'm glad you brought that up. And you make excellent points. I agree that women are definitely an oppressed group in our society, and we can talk about that as well. But before we do that, I'm sensing a lot of strong feelings behind your statement, and I'm wondering where those are coming from.
Well, what do you mean?
Well, you seem upset about something that I said.
Well, no, not really. Well, yeah, I'm upset that women get shortchanged all the time.
I get upset about that all the time too, and I completely understand that. But the way that you were speaking about it made me feel like you were dismissing the issues about race and discrimination.
I guess so, and I apologize. I know that racism is important too.
I'm glad that you see that, and I know that you can use your experience as a woman to know what it's like to be a member of another oppressed group. And so it's important to recognize that, but I sense that you're still angry.
Yeah, you know, it's such a hot topic to talk about race, you know. I feel like you're blaming me and I'm not at fault or responsible.
That's right. You're not at fault or responsible. In fact, none of us here today are to blame for the culture that we live in. But these discussions can trigger those types of feelings. And so let's all talk about that, because now we're getting somewhere. Let's watch another example of a common conversation.
Hey, Dean, how's it going?
It's going good. Things are a little bit hectic, you know. I bought a used car this week, and the sales guy, gosh, you know, he was this flambister guy, and he was a real pain in the butt to work with.
Oh, you said flambister? You really shouldn't be saying that.
What, flambister? That it doesn't mean anything. It's not it's not even a real word. What's the big deal?
Well, it's not a huge deal. I'm just trying to say that...
Look. I've been saying flambister since I was a kid. What's the big deal? I mean, I just don't understand why you have a problem with this and why you have to interrupt me. I have lots of flambister friends.
It's just a matter of being sensitive to the term.
Jeez, forget it. You know, you're just being too sensitive. It's just a word. I've always used it. It's not meant to be offensive, and there aren't any even flambisters in the room to get upset at me.
It doesn't matter if you've always used it. Language evolves. We should be respectful of others. It's not politically correct these days, even, and you should choose words that don't hurt other people, even if they're not in the room.
Yeah, you know, I don't know why you're making such a big deal about it. It's not like, you know, I don't mean to hurt anybody.
Well, intent isn't always enough. Words have power. They can perpetuate harmful stereotypes and attitudes. We should strive to be better.
Okay, Dave. So look, I know, I mean, we've been friends for a while, and I honestly have no idea why you're upset about the word flambister. I really don't. But, you know, we're friends, and we go to the same church, and so, look, at least I'll keep an open mind and maybe do a little, I'll try to understand. I don't understand now, but I'll try to work on it.
That sounds good. There are people that are offended by that, so you try to look into it, and I appreciate you listening. And
Okay, can you get back to listening to me now?
Has anybody here been in a conversation like one of those? Everybody. And how does it feel in your bodies? We can learn to manage anxiety during conversations. You just saw ways to do it. All of those people talking managed to get through the conversation. These may seem like small or even silly little things, but they aren't. Because learning to control your body during difficult conversations builds resilience. It allows us to manage our own feelings and be able to truly listen to the stories of people who experience the world differently than we do. It builds our ability to be in right relationship with other people. It teaches us to calm ourselves during conflict, and that has all sorts of positive benefits in our lives, and it allows us to start changing our culture. I'd like to share just a little story. My kids went to Carlsbad schools, and my daughter wanted to be in a more diverse environment when she went to high school. She wanted to go where more people look like her. So she chose to go to El Camino. And I remember not long after she started there, I went to pick her up from school. And you know how there's lots of kids standing around and lots of people? And for the first time, I could not immediately find her in the group of kids. I couldn't recognize, I couldn't tell which one my daughter was because she wasn't the only mixed kid or somebody with dark hair. And I had this feeling of immense relief for her. I remember talking to her one day about the diversity at her school and the students there, and she said, "You know, Mom, there's a lot of white people too there, but there's so many other people that it keeps them in check." I've thought a lot about that conversation over the years. Can we find a way to live together where our common humanity keeps us all in check and no particular group is the cultural norm? That's the world that I want to build. And I hope that this spirit study helps us learn how to do that together. So seated or standing, please raise your voices in song.
We're going to sing this song through twice. Unitarian Universalist, growing as we go. Unitarian Universalist, growing as we go. Learning many ways, blessing all our days. Unitarian Universalist, growing as we go. One more time. Unitarian Universalist, growing as we go. Unitarian Universalist, growing as we go. Learning many ways, blessing all our days. Unitarian Universalist, growing as we go. Please be seated.
The Sunday offering is an expression of the generosity that makes our congregational life possible. As Buddhist teacher Christina Feldman writes, generosity lies at the heart of spiritual practice. Extending generosity to ourselves and others gladdens our heart, is a direct way of healing division, and brings joy. Please text your donation to Chalice. If you haven't texted a donation before, know that once you text the amount, you'll get a reply with a link to follow to enter your credit card information. If you have already entered this information previously when you've donated, you won't need to enter it again. If your Sunday donation is meant to be part of your pledge amount, pledge payment, please be sure to indicate pledge after the dollar amount. The phone number for text donations will be on the screen in a moment. If you prefer to make an in-person donation, there is a box over there where you can leave cash or check. Please give generously. Please join in dedicating our offering with words of affirmation. At Chalice UU Congregation, our mission is to inspire individual and communal spiritual growth.
Sing a song by Ani DeFranco. She is an American folk singer. She was born in Buffalo, New York in 1970. And in talking about the song I'm going to sing, she had this to say. When you look at education today, you can see the effects of racism. When you look at the environmental crises, and there's no more countryside, there's racism there too. So I was just trying to speak in that song to the way racism and negative forces bring us all down and make us all weaker. White people are so scared of black people. They bulldoze out to the country and put up houses on little loop-de-loop streets. And America got its heart cut right out of its chest. The Berlin Wall still runs down Main Street, separating East Side from West. And nothing is stirring, not even a mouse in the boarded up stores, in the broken down houses, so they hang colorful banners off all the street lamps just to prove they've got no manners, no mercy and no sense. And I'm wondering what it will take for my city to rise. First we admit our mistakes, and then we open our eyes. Ghosts of old buildings are haunting parking lots in the city of good neighbors that history forgot. I remember the first time I saw someone lying on the cold streets. I thought, I can't just walk past here. This can't just be true. But I learned by example to just keep moving my feet. It's amazing the things that we all learn to do. So we're led by denial like lambs to the slaughter, serving empires of style and carbonated sugar water, and the old farm road's a 4-lane that leads to the mall, and our dreams are all guillotines waiting to fall. And I'm wondering what it will take for my country to rise. First we admit our mistakes, and then we open our eyes, or nature succumbs to one last dumb decision. America the beautiful is just one big subdivision. La da 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 da. La da 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 da. La da 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 da.
These words come from our UUA president, Reverend Dr. Sophia Betancourt. Beloveds, I invite you to stop what you are doing if you can and sit with me in the depth of this tragedy of continued violence between Israel and Hamas. How to reconcile the cost of occupation and of war. How to nuance two very real histories of oppression and violence. I am holding close the words of UN Middle East Peace Envoy Tor Wennesland, who said, This is a dangerous precipice, and I appeal to all to pull back from the brink. We, as a people of faith, can condemn violence against civilians, while at the same time engaging the full legacies and histories of oppression that shape such devastating conflict. As a faith tradition, Unitarian Universalists have long worked for peace, and our principles and values call for the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. At the same time, we have not engaged the tangled issues surrounding Israel-Palestine in community since 2018, and our last engagement resulted in severed relationships and deep pain. I pray for the people of Israel and Palestine. I pray for leaders around the globe who must respond to this latest flare of violence and the untenable ethical considerations that abound. I pray for Muslim and Jewish UUs who experience the impact of this long strife acutely. I pray that those of us less likely to know the trauma of unending brutality and harm will not turn away from generational loss, from the devastating realities and their root causes, or from the relentless tragedy of war and occupation. Be gentle with yourselves when you need to be, but do not turn away unless you must. We are one global family living tenuously on the same human-impacted earth. Let us center ourselves in justice as we call for peace. And now, I think quite appropriately, we're going to do a meditation on breathing.
I invite you to remain seated for this song.
Our closing words from Sarah and Mariana.
When I say go in peace, I don't mean go in mindless oblivion.
When I say go in peace, I don't mind go without challenging yourself and others.
When I say go in peace, I don't mean go in utter ease and comfort.
When I say go in peace, I mean go in peace seeking justice.
I mean go in peace, committed to equal rights and opportunities for all.
When I say go in peace, I mean go in peace that is created when, together, we build communities of true solidarity, deep compassion, and fierce, unrelenting love.
Go in peace.
So you are invited to close our time together by singing the well. After our closing hymn, please return to your seats for a brief announcement.
Together, cool, cool water that quenches my thirst, a thirst for justice, a thirst for joy, a thirst for a love that we're all a part of. We drink from the well. We drink from the well together. Hand in hand we are standing as one, standing for justice, standing for joy, stand for a love that we're all a part of. We drink from the well. Open the doors to the world outside, spirits renewed from within. Look for the dream in each other's eyes, the spark where a new world begins. Yes, we drink from the well together. Heart to heart, we are dancing as one, dancing for justice, dancing for joy, dance for a love that we're all a part of. We drink from the well, spirits renewed. We drink from the well, stand hand in hand. We drink from the well, dancing for joy. I feel my heart swell. We drink from the well.
Mamma mia! We had a fun and successful live auction last night. But the auction is not over yet. The online auction is open until 5 p.m. tonight, so you still have time to get that item you have been thinking about bidding on but haven't yet, or that someone has overbid you on. Thanks to all of you for your generosity, and remember, there won't be another auction for 1 whole year.
Sure. Please join us on the patio for refreshments. Thank you.